I paid my sister mortgage, rent, and even her debts. But at the family dinner I paid for, she told our parents, "This loser will never have children like mine." She laughed, parents laughed, but then I calmly told her why I would not pay any more, and now she going crazy. Have you ever sat at a table with people you bled for, only to realize they were laughing while you drowned? That's how it felt that night. Ashley is my younger sister. She was the golden child growing up, and somehow that title stuck long after high school ended and real life started tearing people apart. I went to college, built a business from the ground up, married Madison, and we have 2 kids we're crazy about. Ashley, well, she married Rick. And that alone could be the punchline to a bad joke. Rick hasn't had a steady job in over a decade. He drinks before noon and has this fake charm that he puts on around my parents, like a washed-up game show host. Ashley always defends him. Says he's trying. But the only thing he's consistent at is taking all the money I give them. And I gave them a lot. I paid their rent for over a year. Paid off 3 of Ashley's credit cards. Bought their kids school clothes more than once. When they almost lost their house, I bailed them out for 2 months. I even bought them brand new iPhones last Christmas, 4 of them. Mine were 2 years old, but I figured they needed them more. Madison didn't say much, but I could tell it didn't sit right with her. She told me more than once, "Lucas, this isn't kindness anymore. It's enabling. She's not your child, she's your sister, and she's married. If you can't figure that out, you have to deal with the consequences." But I ignored it. Madison doesn't come from a big family, and I thought maybe she just didn't get it. Or maybe I just didn't want to admit that she was right. Then came that dinner. My parents wanted to have a big family night, and I offered to pick up the tab. Again. I paid for everything, the food, the decorations, even the gas for Ashley because she was short this month. She showed up 40 minutes late, carrying a brand new designer bag and acting like royalty arriving to wave to the peasants. Rick stumbled in behind her, already half drunk. They both got louder as the wine went down. Rick started throwing shade about how his kids actually get straight A's. Ashley chimed in, saying that she was raising kids who were going to do something in life, unlike others. I let it go at first. I'm used to letting it go. But then, as everyone was laughing at some silly story Rick was telling about one of her kids making fun of a teacher, Ashley looked at me. Full glass in hand, a smile on her face like she'd been waiting for this moment. "That loser will never have kids like me." And then she laughed. Rick laughed. My parents laughed. It was like static in my ears. I looked at Madison. She didn't say a word. She just pushed back her chair and stood up. That's when I knew. I stood up too, looked at Ashley and said it straight out. "I'm not paying for anything anymore." She narrowed her eyes as if she didn't understand. No more mortgage. No rent. No bills. No Christmas. No more. She started laughing again, thinking I was joking. I wasn't. I walked out. Madison and the kids followed. No drama, no yelling. Just silence behind us. I thought that was the end of it. But that was just the beginning. Because 2 days later, my parents called and asked what this tantrum was about. Ashley had already twisted the story. She claimed that I had snapped at her in front of the kids and stormed out. That I had embarrassed her and ruined dinner. Then it got worse. Ashley showed up at my office. Uninvited. And she wasn't alone. I was in the middle of reviewing a vendor contract when I got a call from the front desk. She said, "There's an Ashley here to see you." She says she's your sister? I stared at the phone for a second. She'd never been in my office. Never asked where it was. I hadn't even told her what building I'd moved into last year when we expanded. I asked the receptionist if she was alone. "No, there's a man with her." Of course there was. Ashley and Rick strolled in like it was casual Wednesday, both with coffee cups, both dressed like they were trying to look more stable than they were. Ashley was wearing heels, the kind she definitely didn't buy at Target. Rick had a leather jacket I recognized. He bragged about finding it on eBay a few months ago, said it was vintage designer. They followed me to a conference room. I offered them nothing. No chairs. No coffee. I just stood there and waited. Ashley gave me this well-rehearsed speech about how she regretted the things she said at the dinner. How it was all taken the wrong way. She actually said, "I was trying to make a joke, and it came out wrong." Like calling me a loser in front of our parents and kids was somehow comedic timing. Rick stood behind her, nodding and trying to look serious. Then Ashley pulled out a piece of paper. It had a name printed on it in a terrible cursive font. Wicked Vibes. Her new business. Candles, home decor. Custom artisan blends. She said she was starting from scratch. Just needed a little help. A little investment to get her going. I didn't say a word. Just looked at her. She took that as hesitation, not disbelief. She said she had it all planned. Shopify store logo. Her friend Jessica could help with the branding. Rick finally spoke. He said he would handle the operations side. I looked at him and asked what that meant. He shrugged and said, logistics and stuff like that. Ashley jumped in again and said, it's not a charity, Lucas. It's a business. You'd be an investor. I told her no. She blinked a couple of times like she hadn't heard it. Then she laughed. She said, seriously? Like it was a punchline. I said it again. No. Rick stepped forward and said that I owed them. That after all they'd done for our family, it was the least I could do. I asked what exactly they'd done for our family. He said, we kept things together when your parents couldn't. That was it. I told them both to leave. Ashley started screaming, actually screaming in my office. Rick slammed his palm on the table and got way too close. He said I was a selfish piece of garbage, and that Madison was probably the one pulling the strings because she always hated us anyway. I left the room and called building security. They were gone within 5 minutes. I thought that would be the last of it. It wasn't. The next morning my father called. Sounded upset. Said there was a situation. Apparently Rick had shown up at their house around 2 a.m., tried to get into the garage. Said he left some of his tools there and needed them back. But he didn't knock. Didn't call. Just tried to pick the lock. Her neighbor saw him and called the cops. He wasn't arrested, just talked to. But here's the kicker. Later that day, my dad went into the garage to make sure nothing was missing. He found a small duffel bag stuffed behind some old storage bins. Inside were 4 open bottles of vodka, some loose cash, 2 of my mom's old jewelry boxes, and this part made my stomach turn, some of my old company documents. Originals. Things I thought I'd shredded years ago. I asked my dad to bring it all to me. He did. That night, I realized how far this had gone. Ashley hadn't just used me. Rick had stolen from me. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept going over what was in the bag: my mother's old jewelry, the cash, the vodka, the company documents. It didn't make sense. Rick never had access to my office. Those documents were from years ago, before I moved offices. I thought they were shredded. It bothered me so much that I pulled up my old backups from my home server just to check some of the files. That's when I noticed something strange. A login attempt to one of my old business banking portals. From my parents' bank. It wasn't successful. The account had been dormant since I merged everything into the new company. But the attempt had been made at 3:14 a.m. 2 weeks ago. It wasn't a coincidence. I didn't tell Madison at first. I was trying to figure it out on my own. But the more I dug, the more things came up. Old mail that I never received. My dad mentioned getting a letter from me once, and said he gave it to Ashley because she said she'd deliver it. That was last year. I called the bank and flagged everything. Then I called a friend of mine who works in digital security. He offered to do a quick search of my accounts. Within 2 hours, he found something. Ashley or Rick, or both, had tried to open a line of credit in my name. They had my SSN, old business records, everything. They used my parents' address and my old email, which had been hacked months before. They tried to take out $50,000 for business development, under Wicked Vibes. The application didn't go through, not only because they couldn't verify my current employer, because I'm the damn owner. I was shaking. I wasn't even angry yet. Just stunned. Then came the absolute madness. 3 days later I got a phone call from Madison. She was home with the kids when she noticed someone walking by the front of our house twice. Not a neighbor. Some guy with a camera. She went out and asked him what he was doing. He said he was taking pictures for a listing. Said the house was going on the market. She laughed, thinking it was a mix-up. But then he showed her the listing. Printed. With our address. I went home and looked it up myself. Our house. Our address. Our names. with a different contact number and email. The listing was on a small, sketchy real estate website one I'd never heard of. I called the listed number. A woman answered, said her name was Melissa, and that she was handling a private sale. I asked for more information. She paused and then hung up. I filed a police report that night. I then hired a private investigator. It took him 5 days to link the burner phone from the ad to a registered SIM card, purchased by Rick. 2 towns over. From a prepaid store. He used cash, but forgot to use a fake name. Idiot. Rick and Ashley tried to sell my house. Or at least make someone think it was for sale so they could get a deposit. I sat Madison down and told her everything about the line of credit, the attempted fraud, the bag of stolen documents, and now this. She looked at me and asked the only question that mattered. What are you going to do about it? I didn't sleep that night. After everything that had happened, the fake house listing, the attempted line of credit, Rick trying to break into my parents' garage, my mind wouldn't shut down. I kept running through every version of what I could do. Part of me wanted to just block their numbers, change my locks, and never speak their names again. I told Madison just that. Let's just walk away. End it here. No contact. No drama. She didn't look surprised. But she didn't agree. Lucas, you've been running away for years. Look where that got us. I remained silent, just watching her. She was calm, but there was a sharpness in her voice that I hadn't heard before. She wasn't angry. She was finished. They used you. They mocked you in front of your family. They stole from you. They tried to sell our house. What do you think they're going to do next time? Because there will be a next time. I told them I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. I wanted my life back, the quiet life we had worked so hard to build. Madison leaned across the table and put her hand on mine. You don't get peace from people like that. You get more chaos until they run out of ways to hurt you. Or until you make it clear there's a price to pay. I asked her what she meant. She didn't hesitate. Ruin them. She had it all in her head. Not shouting, not dramatic. Cold, strategic. I didn't even know she'd paid that much attention. But she remembered it all, Ashley bragging about being a single mom and getting welfare for the kids, even though she lived with Rick. Rick's DUI that never made it to court because of a paperwork mix-up he'd bragged about at Christmas. She remembered the names Ashley dropped when she talked about borrowing money from one of her friends to keep her candle business alive. We put everything together: emails, screenshots, voicemails, old messages, even wire transfers. I hired a lawyer just to make sure we weren't overstepping any boundaries ourselves. He said it was more than enough for criminal and civil fraud investigations. Madison handled the reporting. The IRS, local police, FDC, Department of Social Services. Even the school board, they were using my donated iPhones as district issued to claim extra money from the state. We reported that too. And then we waited. It took longer than I thought it would. It was almost a month before anything happened. The first blow came when her bank account was frozen for irregular activity. Then came the suspension of welfare and active investigation. Then the IRS froze her last tax refund. Ashley posted on Facebook a picture of her crying with a dramatic caption about snakes in the grass. She didn't name names. She didn't have to. Everyone knew. Then Rick lost it. Apparently, he'd been counting on a small payout from a bogus LLC loan scheme, one that had been reported, thanks to Madison, and the whole thing collapsed. He showed up at my parents' house drunk, screaming about how his life was being destroyed. My dad told him to leave. For once. Then one night I came home late from work. Madison was in the kitchen with the kids. I parked in the garage, closed the door, and as I got out of the car, I heard something. Breathing. Rick was sitting in the dark behind my trash cans. He stood up like it was a normal thing, like we were going to talk. I didn't even let him talk. I stepped back, locked the door behind me, and called the cops right then and there. He saw me do it, and he didn't even flinch. He just stood there. They picked him up 2 blocks away, drunk and with a little knife in his pocket. He told the cops he just wanted to talk. That's when I realized how far gone he really was. And Ashley? She went quiet after that. But she wasn't done. Because a week later I got a letter in the mail. From a lawyer. Ashley was suing me. The letter came on a Thursday. Madison opened it, glanced at the first few lines, and then handed it to me without a word. It was from some third-rate lawyer Ashley had scraped together, threatening to sue me for emotional distress, financial manipulation, and defamation of character. She accused me of trying to destroy her family out of jealousy. It would have been funny if it wasn't so crazy. This woman, my own sister, actually thought she could twist everything around. Make it look like I was the one who'd ruined her life. The same life I'd been funding for years. Madison said. She just made the biggest mistake of her life. And I agreed. The thing about revenge is, once you go down that road, it stops being about anger. It becomes something colder. You start looking at it like a puzzle. Piece by piece. Logically. Mechanical. I called a private investigator. Not the same one as before. This one used to work for an insurance company that specialized in uncovering fraud. I gave him everything: Ashley's business plans, Rick's criminal record, the welfare fraud, the court letters, the fake house listing, the lawsuit. I told him to find anything else I missed. What he found changed the game. Ashley had taken out a credit card in our mother's name, maxed it out on crap. Jewelry, clothes, a weekend trip to Vegas that she said was a business retreat. Our mom had no idea. Rick had 2 open warrants in another county under a different alias. Turns out he'd been arrested in his early 20s and had been using a variation of his name on forms ever since. Sketchy, but not illegal until you commit fraud. But the worst part? Ashley had been secretly collecting child support from an ex. Not Rick. The one before him. She told the state Rick wasn't around. She forged some documents to keep the money flowing while Rick lived in the house full-time. I turned it all over. Within 2 weeks, they were being investigated by Child Protective Services. The fraud reports triggered a full audit. Their bank accounts were frozen again. The IRS opened a formal case and contacted my attorney for follow-up documentation. Their attempt at a lawsuit fizzled. The lawyer dropped her. Ashley stopped posting on Facebook. She stopped returning phone calls. I thought that was it. But then, on a rainy Saturday afternoon, she showed up at my office. Alone this time. No makeup. Wet hair. Hoodie that wasn't hers, probably Rick's. She sat in the lobby like a stranger. My receptionist told me she looked like she hadn't slept in days. I walked out. She stood up quickly. "Lucas, please. We're family." That's all she said. No apology. No explanation. Just those 3 words, as if they should erase everything. I stared at her. I could see her lip tremble, but I felt nothing. Just empty space where a brother should have been. I didn't speak. I turned and walked back to my office. She didn't follow. But I wasn't finished. I had one last step. This is the part one never thought I'd write. After everything that had happened, the lies, the stolen documents, the fake house listing, the lawsuit, there was one last thing I had to do. I didn't even tell Madison at first. It was something I had to decide for myself. I kept asking myself what would happen if I didn't. If I left even one door unlocked. So I made it permanent. I hired a second lawyer, not for court, but for asset protection. I restructured everything under new LLCs, changed my will, created a trust for my children, wrote a clause into it stating that under no circumstances could Ashley or Rick, or even their children, ever receive anything from me, directly or indirectly. Then I filed a formal restraining order against Rick. Based on the garage break-in, the bag of stolen documents, and his showing up at my house with a gun, it was granted without a problem. I made sure that every school my children attended had a copy. Just in case. Madison said it was over now. But it didn't feel over. 2 weeks passed. Then a month. No phone calls. No emails. No middle-of-the-night drama. It was the quietest my life had been in years. And then I started hearing things. A friend from high school texted me out of the blue. He said he had seen Ashley working part-time at a gas station out of town. Another mutual friend mentioned she was couch-hopping with her kids. Rick had disappeared again. No one had seen him since his last job fired him for suspicious behavior. There were rumors that he was living out of his car. That maybe he'd left the state. The kids? No one knew for sure. Just whispers that Ashley had pulled them out of school. Something about a hostile environment and bullying. But I don't believe it. I think she was embarrassed. Or scared. And here's the part one can't shake. I am ashamed. Not of what I did, but of how far it all had to go. I think of those kids, my niece and nephew, living out of bags, changing schools, watching their world fall apart as their mom spirals and their dad disappears. I think about Ashley, sitting on a motel bed, probably scrolling through job listings on a broken phone, still trying to figure out how it all fell apart so quickly. And part of me feels like I pulled the trigger. I don't talk to my parents anymore. Not after they called me cold for not helping, when things got real. Not after they asked me, out of the blue, if I could at least help the kids get new school clothes. It's been 2 months since my last move. 2 months since I closed that book. But I still wake up some nights wondering if I have become the very thing I was trying to fight against. If, in cutting out the poison, I took some of the good with me. I told myself it was justice. That I was setting limits. Protecting my family. But I look at my children playing outside, unaware of what has happened, and I wonder what would they think if they knew what I had done. How far I went. So yeah, I'm posting this here because I honestly don't know anymore. Did I do the right thing? Or did I just become someone else and now I don't know how to come back? Update 1, she came back one last time. I didn't expect to post again. Honestly, I thought I was done with all of this. But something happened last weekend that made it all come back. And now I don't know how to feel. It had been quiet, almost too quiet. No texts, no calls, no weird sightings or mutual friends reaching out. Life had begun to feel normal again. My business was steady. The kids were doing great. Madison and I had finally started planning a real vacation, and for the first time in years, I felt in control. Then Saturday happened. We were in the middle of a backyard barbecue with some friends from the neighborhood. Kids running around, music playing, Madison laughing with some of the other moms. Everything felt light. Until I looked up and saw Ashley. Standing at the edge of my yard. She looked thinner. Hair pulled back, oversized hoodie. Sneakers that looked too big for her. No car nearby. Just standing there, like she walked halfway across town to get here. She waited until I caught her eye. Then she stepped forward. One of the other dads came over, thinking she was lost or something. I waved him off. Madison saw her too. She didn't move. She just watched. Ashley didn't try to get closer than the gate. She said, "I'm not here to start anything." I didn't say a word. She said, "I just want to talk. One last time. Please." I walked out and closed the gate behind me. We walked to the sidewalk. She told me that she and Rick weren't together anymore. He was gone, probably out of state. The motel kicked her out. She's been staying with a friend, barely keeping the kids in school. Said she lost everything. Blamed herself for most of it. Then she looked at me and said, "You were right. About everything. And I'm sorry. I didn't expect that." She asked me if I'd ever consider letting her back into my life. Not to ask for help. Just not being a stranger. She said, "I don't want my children to grow up hating the only person who ever helped us." It hit me harder than I expected. I told her that I needed time. That I didn't know what forgiveness looked like. That I couldn't promise anything, especially after everything. She nodded. Said she understood. She didn't ask for money. Didn't cry. Just thanked me for listening and left the same way she came. And now, I don't know what to think. I don't know if she's manipulating again, or if she's really hit rock bottom. I don't know if opening the door even a crack will bring the whole mess back. But I do know this: when she walked away, she didn't look back. And for the first time since this all started, I didn't feel angry. Just tired. So now I'm sitting here asking this again. What would you do if it was your sister? Is there a point where you let people back in? Or is the door supposed to stay closed forever?